Alright guys, let's go through and take a look at this real quick. Let me go full screen here, alright? Let me go full screen. Does that sound like it's a little bit better? So today we're going to be talking about doing a walkathon. Have you guys heard about walkathons? If I had somebody in my family that had cancer, for example, maybe I want to go raise money to give it to cancer research, right? So if I said, if I go walk 8 miles, how much would you pay me for every mile? And I can either get lump sum contributions, or other people will be like, I will pay you a certain amount of money for each mile that you walk, right? Yeah, there's all sorts of stuff. Dementia, that would work too. There's all sorts of different things that you could raise money for. So have you guys heard of walkathons, yes or no? Okay, some of you are like no, some of you are like yes. All right. In grade school, I remember doing this. Well, let's look at this one. I'm walking in a walkathon to raise money for a charity. Miss Audrey has agreed to sponsor me $2 for every mile that I walk. Is that easy enough? She's going to pay me $2 for every mile that I walk. So if you will take a look at your table right there. Do you see the side of your paper that has a table? Look at the left side table, and underneath it, it has the summary sentence. Let's put that into a very short summarizing sentence. So how about we just say, Audrey will pay me $2 for every mile I walk. That's a lot better than copying the whole problem down, but that gets us all the information that we need. So now, let's go through here and let's take a look at the next thing that we need to do here. Let's fill out this table. Could everybody, and you can see my cursor right here, can you see the miles right there? Can you write miles on that first column? And can you write money on the second one? And that makes sense because I'm walking a certain number of miles, an unknown number, but then each time that I change the number of miles, the amount of money I'd get would change also. So if I don't walk, how many miles will I walk if I don't walk at all? 0. So can you guys just put a 0 right there? And then let me ask you this one question, and it's this idea we just want to use common sense. We don't want to do anything crazy with this. We want to use common sense. If I don't walk any miles, how much money will Audrey pay me? So how much should we put under the money? 0. I think you see where this is going. If we walk 1 mile, how much will she pay me? $2, if she's honest. If I walk 2 miles, $4. If I walk 3 miles, how much? 6. 4 miles gets us $8, and 5 miles gets us 10. Absolutely. All right, so the next thing that we need to go through, though, would be asking this question of where did I start? The number one thing that I want to give to you from this lesson, there's going to be a lot of things, but the two most important things would be the start number and the step number. And we'll kind of get into that over and over again. Where did I start? If I don't walk at all for Audrey, I get how much money? 0. And so it's that idea of this Y number right up here. Do you see the Y number at the top of the chart? It's not always going to be at the top of the chart. Actually, what's going to happen here is that we're making sure that we steal the Y number when it's sitting next to the X number that's 0. Okay, so it's like you find the X number that's 0, and then you steal that one. So where did I start? $0. How much would I get for each mile? How much? $2. And we're going to say right now on your papers, can you just come over here and put this right here and say, well, I had to add 1. So if I walk 1 mile, how much do I get on this side? $2. Now this next part, and I know I just put P there so that way I can unpause the video. Let me scroll up here now. So this next part is called the step number. We know what the start number is. What did I start with? $0, right? That's what I started with. But now the step number, what you're going to do is you're going to find out that you can take this side right here and stack it on top of this right here. What is 2 over 1? What's 2 over 1? What does 2 over 1 turn into? Simplified, it's a fraction. What is it? It's just what? It's just 2. Does that make sense? And so that's what we're going to get to. That 2 over 1, stacking that red plus 2 over top of the plus 1. We're just looking at how it changed each way. This saves us a headache in about a week or so. So now my step number is going to be 2. But do you see this right here? Does this pattern continue all the way down this table? And that's what I need you all to fill in there. I need you to make sure that you get all of this on your paper just like that, including the plus 1s over here on this side too. Okay, can you do that for me? All right, so what can we do now? Well, I think we need to go through and do some things here. Can you put an X either right above the miles? You might have written miles so big, maybe you just put the X right here above it in that column. So that whole left column of the table is always going to be called the X column. So those are our X numbers, right? The number of miles I'm walking, they're my X numbers. What would I call the second column? It would be the Y. And that part should be review, but it's okay if it's not. If you ever get confused about what comes first, say your ABCs. A, B, C, D. How's it end? X, Y, and then Z, but X comes before Y. So X is on the left, Y is on the right. It's just like your ABCs. All right? Now, there's another nickname for the X's, though. There's another nickname. It's actually inputs. Now, since we're running out of space up there at the top, could you just write inputs down here at the bottom of the table right there? That's another name. So instead of my X column, we could call it inputs. And if that sounds a little bit weird, my name is Mr. Tate, but what's my first name? It's David. So, as a result, I've got 2 names that I answer to, but that's not weird, is it? I just got 2 different names. Guess what my brother calls me? Dave. So I've got 3 names. Hey, guess what my kids call me? Old man, right? Because I've been calling my dad old man since he was like 41. Now I'm 43, so my kids call me old man. So I can have a lot of different nicknames, and that's what's happening here. X is also known as input. Now stop and think, what would that Y column also be known as? If X is inputs, then what's Y have to be known as? Outputs. Very, very good. Outputs. And again, that's just another nickname. Y's would be known as outputs. Could you guys think of another name for X or Y? All right, I'm just going to give this one to you because these are the 2 weird ones. And this is like extra information, and we're going to hit it a bunch, and it's going to get a lot better. But I don't want to sit here and wait to give you this information. I'd rather we just start using it. Domain. X is known as the domain. If we looked at all of our X's together, that would be our domain. If we looked at all of our range together, sadly, it's totally different than domain. It's range. So make sure we get that down on the paper there. We will come back to that table in just a second. Now, don't you have a blank table over on the right side of your paper right there? Could you go put down miles and money also? And we're going to be doing another context story problem. That's just like what the Audrey problem was, okay? It's a scenario, it's a situation, and we're going to be looking at it in that context, and we're going to build on a little bit of what we know, and then we're going to do some cool stuff with it on the back. So, Sadie has promised to give me money if I walk. Sadie has agreed to sponsor me how much for each mile? $3. So, what do you say we go right over here and we make a summary sentence right here? Because you don't want to copy down that whole thing right there, do you? So how about this? Sadie will pay me $3 for every mile I walk. All right. So, the next thing that we need to do is we need to fill this table out together. Now, I've got Audrey's table kind of hidden right here, okay? So right over here on the right side of your paper, we start out with what? 0. But that is not my start number. Not that 0. No. Isn't my start number going to be the one that's right over here that we're about to put into the Y column? If I walk 0 miles, how much money will I get? 0. So that one is going to be my start number. And again, we're going to go over the start and step numbers here in just a bit. And then, of course, if I walk 1 mile, Sadie's going to give me 3. If I walk 2, she's going to get me 6. 3 is going to get me 9. And it just kind of keeps going up. And you can see the patterns very clearly. All right, so ladies and gentlemen, let's go through this a little bit further. Do you see a pattern right here? Now what I need you to start looking for is how do you jump from one row to the next row, but don't use multiplication. I want you to use adding or subtracting. What would you do to get from 0 down to 3? Plus 3. So could you put plus 3? And we're going to do the exact same thing on the left side of the table column 2. To get from 0 to 1, obviously we would add 1. So I want you to put those there. Some of you already have them on there, and that is awesome. And then do you see that that pattern continues from one row to the next all the way down? It's very predictable, isn't it? So make sure that you're filling that table in just like that. That is what is so awesome about these scenarios, these context situations, is that they are so predictable. But because they're predictable, that's what's going to let us be able to do some cool things here. Oh, what do I have next here? What do I have next? Oh, yes, the start number. We talked about that. What is my start number going to be again? 0. But is it the 0 in the X column or the 0 in the Y column? Yeah, but it's not. Look, my start number will not always be 0. Are we clear on that? Today it is, but it will not always be 0. What you're looking for is where it is a 0 in the X column, and then you look right over to the Y, and you still whatever's in the Y column. Okay, so you're looking for where X is 0, and you just grab what's sitting right over next to that X is 0. Okay, is that clear? So make sure you write down start number right off to the side up there. Please do that on your paper. We will need that information in just a bit. So write down start number and 0. Hey, you might even want to circle this or something and just kind of draw a small little line up to start. You might want to do that just that way you know where to train your eyes to go steal stuff. Not that stealing's good, but sometimes it happens, right? Now, how about we go on and we take a look at the next thing here? What about the step number? Now, if you need to pull your step number down a little bit because you drew that line, that's fine. What is my step number going to be on this one? What's going to happen again and again and again? It's what? It's a plus 3. But now I just want to remind you, though, we take a look at both of the pluses or whatever's happening, the plus or minus on the outside of those tables, and we are always going to take this side, the 3 on top, the right side on top and the left side on bottom, and it stair stacks. What does 3 over 1 turn into? What's 3 divided by 1? What is it? 3. So my step number is 3, which is also, hey, isn't that the same thing as this right here? Yeah. But we can't always count on that, so I like to look at the table because when we stack it right on top of each other, that really solves us a huge headache in a little bit. Not today, but a little bit down the road. All right, so we've got a start number and we've got a step number. We're good there. Hey, guys, can you go over to Audrey? What was our start number for Audrey? It was also 0. It was that one. We find the X that's 0, and we look directly to the right. We look directly to the right of that X 0, and we go, oh, yeah, whatever that Y number is, we steal it. Okay? That means if I didn't even show up, I'm not getting anything from these people. What's my step number for Audrey? And make sure you're writing this down. Make sure you got the start number for Audrey. Make sure you got the step number for Sadie. Make sure, see if it's on that screen right now, it pretty much needs to be on your paper. What's my step number for Audrey? It is 2 because it was 2 over 1, right? And 2 divided by 1 is 2. That's what it is. And we are going to use those two numbers, and it will make our lives so much better. Now, it's been a little bit, and so we need to just make sure that we haven't forgotten something. I see some of you guys have already filled this in on your tables, and that's awesome. What can we fill in that I haven't for my Sadie table over there? Yeah. What is that column called for? What's the first one? X. So can you put an X up there maybe at the top? Kind of make it match up like how Audrey's was, okay? What's the next thing that we could call the X column? No, the X column. Inputs. So could you put inputs down there? And then there was one more name. Domain. Domain is all of my X's together. What's the money column going to be called? Y. Or? Outputs and range. So make sure you get that one down, and then quite frankly, your page should look just like my page, and we're halfway through. Let me pause the video while you're catching up. All right, so at this point, your page needs to match mine. I've paused it. It looks like we're ready to go. So at this time, what we're going to do is we're going to turn your paper over to the back side. You will see those two blank graphs. Okay? We're going to use the one on the left to start with. And I'm going to cover up the right graph so that way you can see what we had for the Audrey paper so you don't have to constantly flip back and forth. So you can look up here on my screen and we can look at Audrey. I want to graph Audrey's scenario. However, what we need to do is we need to create an equation. Audrey will pay me $2 for every mile I walk. Do you see up here I have this equation? Don't write this down just yet. In fact, the only thing I want you to put is up there where it says equation. Can you put y and then an equal sign? Y and then an equal sign right up there. If they ask you for an equation for this chapter, I want you to always start with a y equals. Don't even think about it. It just starts with a y equals. If they say, please go build the equation, the first thing that you should put down is y equals. If you don't know anything else, you can always put down y equals, and maybe I'll give you partial credit just for the y equals because it means you listened to me, right? Now, do you see where it says step number? What's the step number for Audrey? What was it? 2. See, look, we had it written down on our papers, didn't we? And how did we know that step number was 2? Well, we did this stuff. The 2 over 1 got us 2. So could you now write down 2x? We just slapped the x right next to it. So the 2 is going to times the x. So y equals 2x. Now, do you see where it says start number behind it? Well, that start number is 0 for us. So you know how like when we were combining like terms and we were just like, well, just put a plus in front of it unless it's a negative or something like that. I just want you to put plus 0. There's your equation. We built it using a start and a step number and a little template. You know, it's easy as can be. Y equals step number, x start number. We're done with the equation. Now, at this time, we're going to graph that equation, or you could think of it as we're going to graph the Audrey scenario. And in order to do that, we need to label the y and x axis. Could you guys put a big Y up there at the top? It's so small. Can you make it a little bit bigger up there? In fact, I don't even think the Y's on there, isn't it? So maybe you put it right above the graphical word, because that graphical thing is just a little bit lower, isn't it? And then how about we put an X over there on that axis down there. We're going to put an X down there at the very, very bottom. All right. And the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to put a 0 caddy quarter, kind of diagonal of this. Now, I'm going to take my cursor, and this is where I don't want it. I don't want your 0 underneath it like this, and I don't want it on the side like that. I want it diagonal, kind of kicked out to the side. That's the only one, because that 0 is a 0 for the x-axis, but it's also a 0 for the y-axis. Thank you. You got me worried there for a little bit. So that is the 0 that's marking for 2 different number lines, isn't it? Now, the next thing that needs to happen here is that we're going to number line our x-axis very carefully, and this is what you will not do. You will not be nasty on this. You will not be sloppy on this. You will go very slowly, and you will write very neatly. And so your 1 and 2, do you see it is directly underneath those lines right there? Do you see it's directly underneath it? You will keep it beautiful. I don't want your best handwriting. I want your perfect handwriting. Your 3 needs to be directly underneath it. 4. And can you just run that all the way out until you get to 10? Okay? I'm going to pause while you guys catch up. All right. So let's go to the y-axis. We all agree that that 0 is the start of the y-axis, but do you see how I'm going to make sure that that 1 is going to be split by that horizontal line running through it? Do you see that? It needs to cut that 1 in half. Do you see that? My 2, it doesn't, look, you're not putting the bottom of the 2 with that line. We need to have it to where if we extended this line right here, it's cutting through the 2. We want it just straight through it. Okay? And I need you to go all the way up to, how high does it go? No. It's past 10. Yeah. Now, if you can't quite get 13 to show on there, we'll probably be okay. But can you at least get up to 12? All right? Well, that's interesting at that point. So we're going up to 12 or 13 on the y-axis. The next thing that we're going to do is we're going to look at this table right here, and we're going to get some information off of it. Hey, don't we have an x column? Don't we have an x column on here? Label the x-axis for my x column. Do you see that my x column is known as miles? So guess what my x-axis numbers are going to represent? The number of miles. So if you don't mind, just put number of miles. Technically, you could just put miles. But do you understand that's what we're doing? We're looking at our XY table to get information about how to label this. Could somebody help me figure out how we should label the y-axis?
Number of
Money. Something with money, right? Since my y column is money, you can see it right there, it's money, then we're going to come over to our y-axis and we're going to put money. Now you can use the money sign, you can write the word money. I'm not too picky, but you do probably want to turn your paper sideways so you can write it just like that. Okay? We're almost done with this one, and it's going to get so much easier because we're going to do it again and again and again. And you want to know what? In just a second, I'm going to show you how the start and step number can make the graphing easy if we have the start and the step number. Okay? But before we do that, we're going to take a little lollygag into yesteryears. We're going to graph each point. Do you see the 0, 0, an X, and a Y? You see they're a pair, the 0, 0. Do you remember ordered pairs? You can write them with the parentheses up there. And so we can write that as an ordered pair. And so now I need you to tell me where would 0, 0 be on this graph? It'd be the bottom left right there. So can you put a dot? And I don't mean a speck. I mean a point. It should be big enough that I can see without my glasses. We're not talking about it being horrible, but it's not a speck. Okay? It shouldn't be confused with somebody spilling a little bit of pepper on your paper there. It needs to be big enough that we can see it. Now, what about the next level right there? Do you see that 1, 2 combo right there? 1 is your one is your x number, and y is your 2. So now how does that work? How do we know how this works? Well, if 1 is your x-axis, do you see how 1, hey guys, look up here, look up here. Do you see how on the table right there, my 1 is in my x column, so I'd go to 1 for my x-axis. What is my y-axis number? 2. So now I run up 1 at my x-axis until I hit 2 on the y-axis line, and boom, that's my point. Does that make sense? So that's one way that we can graph this whole table. So where would you put 2, 4? Right there? Could you graph the rest of it? 3, 6, 4, 8, 5, 10. So I'm just going to slowly set this one up as you guys are doing it, and you can check. But I'm going to show you a different way to graph this in just a second using the start and the step. And there's my 4, 8. And the last ordered pair would be the 5, 10. I'll let you guys catch up. All right, so we have graphed that table. Now technically you should run a line up through the dots, but we'll get to that in just a second. But look at the start number. What was our start number for Audrey? 0. And where can we find that at? Well, wasn't it right there in the equation, the plus 0? And technically, wasn't it right here, right? So there's a lot of different spots that we can look at. Or if you look at the scenario, we hadn't gotten anything if we didn't walk at all. So you'd start with nothing for Sadie. She wasn't saying, hey, I'll pay you $5 just to show up, right? It was nothing. So there's different ways you can get that start number. Well, if you look at it, though, look at our dot on the y-axis. Do you see that dot is sitting at 0 on the y-axis? Now, I know it's at 0 on the x-axis too, but is it at the y-axis right now too? So your start number is where you put the dot on the y-axis. Literally. Boom. Now, this is the part where I like this. We're now going to use the, what's the other number? The step number. I need you to draw this in on your graph, because once you see it, you don't unsee it. It's okay, though. It's not going to give you nightmares. So for this part right here, what was our step number? 2. But how did we get the step number? Didn't we say, hey, it's the same thing as 2 over what number? 1. Remember that? So could you guys just write maybe a 2 over 1 like that and put an up arrow beside the 2 and a right arrow beside the 1? Sometimes, a long time ago, they would say this is rise over run. We're not going to worry about that. We're going to make the step number tell us how to step from our starting point. What was our starting number? What was our starting number? 0. Now, your step number. Remember, we always took this number and we threw it over top of what? That number. And so do you see that that's where we got the 2 over 1 right there? Do you see it? Okay, now let me erase that part right there. So now, from your start number, I need you to step up 2 squares and step to the right. How many? 1. Did that get us exactly to the point that you already have? Now step up again. Step up 2 and to the right 1. Did we get to another point that we already have? This is what I need you to sketch in on your papers, guys. That little, see those green arrows? What's that look like? What's it look like? What? Stairs. So why do I call it a step number? Because we're walking up the stairs. Is that starting to make more sense about why I'm calling it a step number? And now, could we just keep going up 2 and over 1, up 2 and over 1, up 2 and over 1? Absolutely. And you can see the staircase is building, but more importantly, can we predict where the next point would go? I would go up how many? 2 and over 1. So the nice part is that the start number tells you where you start, and the step number tells you how you can go from that start dot, the start point, to the next one, and to the next one, to the next one. And so now, I want you guys to finish that graph. Can't we put one more dot on here before we run out of room? It would be right there. Now, if we went up again, you can see we would run out of the graph, wouldn't we? Yeah, so we're not going to do that. But I just wanted you to see that. And so if you have that stair steps written on your paper, I'm hoping that now you understand why we have the steps. Now, the last thing that I need you to do is I need you to connect all the dots and put a little arrow at the end, because it's showing that, hey, that relationship's going to keep going up. If I walk 10 miles, she's going to have to give me more. Okay, so the next thing that we need to do is take a look at the Sadye graph, right? We need to take a look at the Sadye graph. Oh, wait. We need to title it. Now, you could call it like Audrey. But how about we just put down money for miles, and we'll put Audrey in parentheses. Okay? So, that's one thing that we tend to forget, is to title a graph, label the x and y axis, number the x and y axis. Make sure you put a line with an arrow on it. Those are things that we have to do when we say graph it. All right, now let's do the graph for Sadye. Let's label the x and y axis very carefully, just like we did. Can we go ahead and label the money and the number of miles? It should be just like the Aubrey one, isn't it? All right. So now let's take a look at the table data for Sadye. And to keep you from having to flip back and forth, I'll put it over here on the left side so we can see Sadye's there, okay? Ladies and gentlemen, let's just use the start and step number. What do you say? What was our start number? What was our start number? So, oh wait, I'm always getting this out of the way. Let's use our start and step number for the equation. So we always put down y equals, right? Ah, there we go. What was it? What did we put in front of the x? Yeah, we're always going to then use the step number. So we put a 3, right? That one right there. And then what do we put beside the 3? An x. So the x always is right next to the step number. And then what's the start number? It's a 0, so just put plus 0. Very, very good. Now that's not too scary, is it? It's y equals the step number x plus the start number, right? That's not too scary. Now, let's go and graph this one, but now let's not graph the ordered pairs. You could graph 0, 0, you could graph 1, 3. You can do that. But let's use the start number. Graph the start number on y. Our start number is 0, so you go to your y-axis and you find 0, and you put a nice point. Boom. Right? What was our step number? That is going to help us step up. Remember, though, that's the same thing as a 3. So see how the plus 3 is on that right side on your y-axis? It was a plus 3, and it's on your y column. So on your y-axis, that's the one going up. If it was minus 3, we would do what? We would go down. You could go down the stairs into a basement if you had to. So up 3, and then the x column, it had plus 1s off to the side. So that'd be 1 to the, which direction? To the right. Up 3, 1 to the right. There's your new points. And then can you step up again? Can you literally go up 3 and 1 to the right? There's your point. Up 3, 1 to the right. Up 3, 1 to the right. What happens now that we don't have enough room to step up 3? We're just done? Yeah. Now normally, hey listen, as you get better at this, you're not going to be drawing the steps in every single time. All right. So I got interrupted there. I can't remember what I was saying. All right, let's go back over. Are we good using the start and the step numbers? Now you can use the ordered pairs, and it's kind of up to you, but I like the start and the step numbers. It's pretty nice. So can you draw a straight line through and put an arrow at the end of that line? So that way it shows that this relationship could keep going if we had more room on the graph, right? How come we don't go below 0? I can't think of a scenario where I'm going to have to pay Sadie. Sadie pays me, correct? So that's why. And now I'm going to ask you one last question. Can you guys think what we haven't done yet? It's what? It's the title. So money for miles, and we'll put Sadie in parentheses. Now, there's no formula for how to title these graphs. You need to title it kind of what's being described. So if somebody had just said walkathon Sadie, money Sadie's paying me for walkathon. I mean, there's so many different variations that we can have. We're just trying to translate that idea to the reader that's coming in blind and they didn't see the little paragraph that I didn't make you copy, right? Now, thankfully, if you flip back to the other side, you do have the summary sentence, and that kind of gives you a little bit of issues there. But see, these graphs are meant to stand alone. You got to think of these graphs as being given to a person without seeing the XY table or without seeing the problem, and so you should be able to get all of this information, for the most part, from the graph if it's labeled correctly. Does that make sense? Now, when I go to grade my test, normally I take off points if you don't put a title, or if you don't label what your X or Y axis is, or if you don't tell me that, hey, it's miles or money, right? So there's lots of little points that you can earn, but you can also lose them. So in order to get us ready for this, we're going to practice this stuff almost every single day. Could you make sure that your name is on that paper? Maybe put the period on there. I can't remember if I put a period on there, but maybe your name and the period. And we'll wrap this one up.